first speaker is Jeff Blankenberg. Jeff is really, really good friend. Jeff is the only speaker who has spoken at every single X conference. So he's our only 7-time speaker. More out of pity now for Jeff. Every year he's like, please can I come back? No, Jeff's a good friend. I've spent way too much time with him on vacations and those types of things. He stays at my house, and he'll go to my daughter's room and take a bunch of sticky notes and leave little notes all over my daughter's room. And she just randomly finds them throughout the year. They're buried inside books, that kind of thing. So it's always fun when she finds them. I'll be in my daughter's room talking to her, and she'll just be like, she'll walk up and pull a sticky note out from somewhere. So it's very cool. So I'd like to welcome Jeff Blankenberg.
So I have to hurry here. Some of you may be watching your watches. I'm sure a couple of you are. I have maybe a minute. So I have it in my slide. We're just going to skip over it. But right in the back of the room right now, you guys may be aware today is Pi Day, March 14th of 2015. And in 1 minute, it will be 926, which is the next 3 digits of pi. And so I have the honor of celebrating Epic Pi Day with you all. So the people in the back of the room are now handing out pies to everyone in the room. So everybody gets a pie on Pi Day. So, like Mike said, my name is Jeff Blankenberg. I have been here a bunch, and I look forward to this every year. I will admit, though, I don't beg to come here. Mike usually has a late request. Jeff, can you put something together for Cadillacs? Awesome, I'd be happy to. And related to the sticky notes, it sounds awful to hide notes around someone's room and they can find them over the year.
It does.
It's worse when you number them 1 to 10, and don't make a number 3. That's the best. So she's still looking for number 3. Anyway. So I was asked to kind of start this conference off and warm you guys up and get the day kind of kicked off. So this is my Twitter handle. I know a lot of people are on Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff, so I'm the same name everywhere. So if you want to say good or bad things about this talk, please do.
Pie!
All right, it's pie time. We just did it, everybody. Happy Pie Day. Okay, so I thought, well, what's a great way to get people kind of happy and laughing a little bit. So I went to Google image search and I typed in funniest picture on the internet. And I found this. This is really funny. The longer you look at it, the funnier it gets. There's the cat, there's the girl flying out of it. It's great. This was number 2. You can't stop staring at this one. I love it. So, and then the third one, this is hands down probably my favorite, is this one. You can see his eyes. Let's really zoom in. Oh, I can't lose my picture right now. Did we just reboot? Come on back. Mike's back there pulling the plug. He saw a picture of himself.
Hey, so while Jeff's doing that real quick, Wi-Fi, I've been told that the event Wi-Fi is probably going to crumble under everyone being on it. 4G should be really strong. If you absolutely positively need to get on the Wi-Fi, it is 310 guest. Password is event 2014 with a capital E. Okay, just keep in mind, if you all get on it with all your devices, it's going to crumble. So, you can just skip on that.
This is the best part. Making fun of Mike. Anyway, I was gonna make fun of Mike's face. All right.
Next time it comes up, sketch it quickly.
Here, I'll just trace it. How are those pies? Awesome. I recommend the chocolate, but the lemon's also pretty solid. Well, I'll tell a little story about that while we're waiting for this. So it was Thursday night, 2 nights ago, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, oh my God, I'm speaking on Pie Day. I need to get some pies. And I will tell you, these pies are generally sold in gas stations. You find them for like $1.29 on the little rack as you're paying for your gas or whatever. And so finding 120 of these in one day, not the easiest task, but I did it. I accomplished it, and you guys are now enjoying pie, so I think it's worth it. But that was most of my morning yesterday. By the way, gas stations have about 12. I love that it's frozen on this picture, actually.
Hey, Jeff, we may punt and have you hook up for that one.
That's fine.
We should be all right. Still flashing there.
It's really scary. Maybe just avoid it. Glad this isn't a tech conference.
Thanks. So, part of my talk today, I'm talking about being a beginner. And so I tried to pick an outfit that most looked like I was a 6-year-old. This one. Sorry. Oh, you need the dongle. Yeah. You're a professional. Thank you.
So how were the pies?
Do we just need to flip the input on this now? There it is. All right. So again, this was supposed to be a transition into funny pictures, and we end up with Mike's face. But just to make it a little funnier, we'll do this. Oh, is it not in? There we go. So I thought that was pretty good. So okay. So I was going to then talk about Pie Day. Everybody's got pie. Ooh, awesome. So we move past that, and now we'll come into my actual talk. Talk about being a beginner. So this is something that I've been thinking about quite a bit lately. And the idea of being a beginner isn't that you should try to throw away everything you know, and there's nothing wrong with being an expert. This is a great quote from Steve Jobs, and I'll read it because I know it's kind of light on the background. It says, "I didn't see it then, but it turned out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life." That's pretty profound as you think about it. This guy was the CEO of a pretty successful hardware company. He got fired, took a few years off, did some other amazing things, and came back. And obviously, Apple's doing pretty well. He's not doing as well, but his company is doing very well. I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean I can't say he's doing well. So what is a beginner? As I thought about this, the best way to start is always with a definition. And so I grabbed this, and one of the things that stood out to me as I was doing my research and thinking about beginners and experts and how this all plays out was that this word always shows up when you talk about a beginner. You're a learner, someone that's got to take on a new challenge. They've got to take in new information. And what I found as we start thinking about what is an expert, it's somebody that wears this sticker, right? I know everything. As I look at the definition here, there's no reference to learning or advancing or growing of any kind. as we think about people that consider themselves experts and people that are viewed as experts, they're not expected necessarily to be learning, to be growing. They've gotten there. They've done their time. And so this is another great quote, which I think kind of pins experts into a corner. An expert is a person who's made all the mistakes that can be made in a very narrow field. If you think about that, that's pretty true. We're all experts at stuff. It's not terribly valuable, perhaps. And I think I have some examples of that in a moment. But there's a great book out there. If you guys haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. It's called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And in this book, if you just read it at its surface, he talks about an expert being someone that needs 10,000 hours of experience to be an expert. 10,000 hours is a lot. I don't know if you guys have ever really done the math on what that really takes or how many hours a year you work, but I'm going to do it for you. So if you work 8 hours a day, 10,000 hours divided by 8, that's 1,250 days. You divide that by what we generally agree, at least in America, to be about 260 work days a year if you take weekends and a couple of holidays out. This is no vacation, of course. If you do that, you end up with just under 5 years of having to do this kind of thing, whatever it may be, to be considered an expert. Now the good news is you read the book, what you'll find is he doesn't really mean like just to be a great software developer or to be, tremendous in your field. It's way beyond that. It's the people that have spent 10,000 hours and have really invested that or more to become an expert at what they're doing are people, first of all, whoa, that's a lot, sorry, are the people that oftentimes have one name recognition, right? These are the people that are just at the absolute top of their field. If we think about the NFL, there are a ton of quarterbacks in the NFL. There's the starters, there's backup guys, there's even third-string quarterbacks. There aren't a whole lot of quarterbacks in the NFL that can go by one name. If I say Peyton, everybody knows exactly who I'm talking about. He is the cream of the crop when we talk about quarterbacks. Now, me being a Browns fan, I don't know what a cream of the crop quarterback is, so, but these are the kind of people who have invested the time and the energy into becoming experts, and this is like the absolute best in the world at their craft. We don't necessarily have to achieve that to become an expert, and I want to make sure that I set that expectation. But there are a lot of people that are incredibly successful that don't have this kind of name recognition. Look at this list. Anybody know who these people are?
Alan Turing.
You might, right? I mean, you might recognize some of these names. These are huge names in our industry in one way or another. But we may not recognize them by first names, but these are, without question, experts. How about this list? You know who these people are? Does this help? These are the 8 richest people in the world. But most of us don't recognize their names by just one name, right? And these are incredibly successful people. So, what are you an expert at? And I actually want to have a conversation about this. There are a diverse group of people in this room. And I'm really interested to know, what are the things that you guys consider yourselves experts at? And I don't mean software development, I don't mean what you do professionally. What are the other things? For example, I'll get it started. I like to consider myself an expert at golf. I'm pretty good. I'm about an 8 handicap. I'm not the greatest golfer in the world. I'm not going to beat the guy named Tiger. But I can play golf. I can teach golf. I can teach my kids how to play golf. I can share my knowledge and my experience about golf. But as I think about myself as a golfer, I'm also still learning. I'm figuring out how to take different shots, use different clubs, figure out how to hit the ball out of the sand versus out of the fairway. This is something I'm still growing at, but I think a lot of people would consider me on the expert end of what a golfer is. Another one is volleyball. As a short guy, this is not something most people would consider true of me, but I played volleyball in high school and in college, still play a lot competitively now. I coach high school volleyball, so I'm educating kids on how to the right techniques and how to block people, even though I'm only 5'10", I can still do that. So these are the kinds of things that I consider myself an expert in. Another one, I don't know if you guys have ever seen a diving platform, ever stood at the top of a 10-meter platform. That's one of the most terrifying places on earth to me, but I dove in high school and college.
And 2 years ago.
And 2 years ago. She's seen it, she knows it's true. But I used to hurl my body off of the top of those platforms and hope that I hit in a nice way and it didn't hurt. Practicing sucks off of the platform. But I will tell you, this is just my little expert knowledge about diving that you may not know. You've all gone off a diving board at some point in your life and smacked on the water, and you get that red mark like on your belly or your back or something. When you fall from the 10-meter platform and you smack, it doesn't leave a red mark. What it does is leaves a white mark with a red ring around it. And it hurts for about a day and a half. It's awful. So these are some things I'm an expert on. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to volunteer like a thing they're an expert at? Irritating Mike Eaton. I think everybody's pretty good at that. And Mike is also very good at that for everyone else. Is there anybody else that wants to volunteer like a thing that you're actually an expert at? Writing. All right. Writing's a good one.
Teaching 4-year-olds.
Teaching 4-year-olds. There's a lot. You guys, everybody should be like, riding bike, I got that one. Right? Like, you're an expert. So this is one of those other things, though, that we all strive to be an expert, but we all spend our entire lives considering ourselves beginners. I can't possibly be an expert at that. There's people better than me. Of course there's people better than you, but it doesn't mean you're not an expert. So what does it mean to be a beginner? What are the things about being a beginner at something that are valuable? The things that we as experts in software or whatever it may be, what are the things that we should be thinking about? What are the things that we should strive to continue to achieve as a beginner? Well, the one benefit of being a beginner that we don't get a pass at when we're experts is expectations. There's a much, much higher expectation on us as experts than there is as a beginner. For example, an ice cream cone. If I go out with a bunch of my friends and we buy ice cream cones and I drop mine on the ground, people are going to be like, you idiot. What were you doing? But if I go out with my 4-year-old and he drops his ice cream cone, I'm probably not going to say, you idiot, because he's a beginner. And so I'm giving him a pass. And we do the same thing at work, or at least we should, and I'll get to that. If you're not failing every now and then, it's a sign you're not doing anything very innovative. We as experts do our best to avoid failure. We spend a lot of our time invested in making sure that we don't fail. I don't think that's necessarily a good approach. I think that as we work, as we think about things, we need to give ourselves the opportunity to fail. We need to take some risks. We need to do things that allow us to take that chance. Because without doing that, we miss out on a lot of opportunities. We stay in that nice conservative band. I'm going to do my architecture the same way every time. We're going to make sure it scales this way. We're going to set up the data model to do these things. But at the end of the day, that's pretty boring. So I have a little story I want to tell. I started at Microsoft just almost 8 years ago. And before that, I had worked for a consulting company where I had the opportunity to come speak at conferences like this. But it was all on my own time. A lot of you have probably done something similar. And Microsoft came to me and said, hey, we would really like you to come be an evangelist for Microsoft. We'd love you to go speak and talk about our technologies. And I had the fine opportunity to work with this guy who was featured in Mike's talk as well. His name's Josh Holmes. And so I had accepted my job offer, and he was doing an event in Columbus prior to me actually leaving the previous consulting company and joining Microsoft. I was there just as an attendee, and he pulled me aside. He was doing a full day on web development, Silverlight and stuff. Keep in mind, this was like 2007 when that was almost relevant. And so he got there, and he knew that I had some experience with Silverlight, played with a lot of that stuff. And he goes, hey man, I've got this session this afternoon. It was like 10 a.m. I've got this session this afternoon, it's at 2. I've got the slides. Could you give this presentation from 2 to 3 on Silverlight? Josh, that's 4 hours from now. I've never seen the content. I have no idea what to talk about. How would I ever do that? And he goes, well, here, you've got the next 4 hours. Find a room, camp out with the content. You should know most of this stuff. And just get up and talk about it. If you're going to be an evangelist for Microsoft, you're going to do this all the time. Like 4 hours notice never actually happened in the 6 years I did that. But he had me convinced. And one of the most impactful things he's ever said to me, and there's been plenty, I said to him, Josh, what if I get up there and I freeze? What if I suck? And he looked me straight in the eye, and he's got this big bushy goatee and a very bass voice. And he looks at me and he goes, what if you don't? And I had to take a pause there for a moment, because that was a really profound thing he just said to me was, yeah, I could actually also succeed at this, and I hadn't even considered that. I was so afraid of failing and getting up there and just being like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So that was a big moment for me, and that really pushed a lot of my speaking career forward, because I wasn't afraid to get up on stage. I wasn't afraid to come and talk to people about a talk that I wrote last night. So, just kidding. So excitement is another one. As we think about the times that you start a new job, think about the days at the job prior where you're like, it's 9, I should probably go, right? And you think about the days when you start a brand new job as that beginner. You may be an expert in whatever you're doing, but it's a new place, it's a new experience. You've got new places to submit your expenses. There's all sorts of great new things, right? And as you go through all of this and you think about all the excitement you have for your job, why can't that be a thing that's there all the time? I want to feel like this every day. Like, oh my God, this is going to be great. Unfortunately, I don't get to feel like that every day at work, because we have things to do and we kind of get caught up in the grind. And we want to just get through it. And we don't look for those opportunities to make it new and exciting. So as every great story starts, I was in Vegas. And I was with a friend of mine named Matt Casco. I don't know if any of you know him. A few of you probably do. We were there for a conference called Mix. This is a series of conferences Microsoft ran in the late aughts. And it was really focused on design and web development and UI stuff. And it was a phenomenal conference. I enjoyed going every year. But while we were there in '07, we had this idea, having never done anything like this before. Wouldn't it be cool if we could take our access, because I had just started at Microsoft, wouldn't it be great if we could take our access to the people that are at Mix and do a conference in Columbus? That's where I live, in Columbus, Ohio. We could do a conference there. We could invite some of the Microsoft speakers. We could get a lot of the local community that knows their stuff and get them to speak at this conference. And it would basically be like another Mix conference, but in Columbus. Now, obviously, we don't have Vegas venues and that kind of stuff. That was before casinos were allowed in Ohio. But we thought this is a really neat idea. What kind of venue would be cool? So we had a couple of these. And we heard that this movie was coming out. This is the first new, the reboot of Star Trek. And so we thought, what would be really cool? What if we held a conference in a movie theater? And, well, there's this Star Trek movie. What if we did it on the day it opened? We could just have a conference, and then everybody sticks around and they get to see a movie on the day it opens up. That'd be pretty cool. And we called it Star Trek. Mix, Star Trek, all goes together really nice. Next year we'll change the name. It'll be Iron Man 2. We'll call it Iron Mix or something like that, right? It'll be great. Now, one, as a beginner, you should know if you're going to create a conference, as Mike learned, you don't change the name every year. You have to kind of keep a brand and keep people familiar with your stuff. So as much as even the board of this conference today hates the name, we're sticking with Star Trek because it's a thing people know and they're familiar with. But the most interesting thing to me, as I've been building this talk and thinking about this stuff, is that we started out with no idea what we were doing. I actually got home from Vegas and I drove around to a few movie theaters and I was like, will you guys do something like this? And they're like, yeah, we'll rent you theaters. And some of them made me work with their corporate offices, others would let me work with the manager in the room. And we got varied prices. Each theater would be $10,000 a day, down to one theater that was, well, we'll charge you, I don't know, $800 a theater per day good. I was like, I like you guys, that's great. So we started small and kind of grew, and we've learned things along the way, but it's become one of those things that's always, every year it's a new adventure. How are we going to figure out this problem? How are we going to solve this thing? We've had, this may happen up here in Michigan as well, but movie theaters are starting to renovate. And so instead of having a ton of seats in a theater, they're ripping all those out and putting in the big leather recliners. So the movie theater we were at originally did that. They cut their seating by 60%. That's awesome for their moviegoers. It sucks for a conference. You want to pack people in and have lots of room. But this past Wednesday, we put our tickets on sale for this conference. And I want to tell you, 2 months ago, as we were thinking about this thing, we had a discussion about whether or not we should even do it this year. It's so much work, and we're not sure if we're going to get the venue, because the current venue we're in is considering a renovation, and it's going to be after our event, so we're good. But we seriously considered just scrapping this thing, just throwing it away, and we're just done. And we decided, let's give it one more year and see how it goes, and then we can make some decisions going forward for the future. And we put tickets on sale on Wednesday, and we sold 1,500 tickets in 182 seconds. This is a thing. This is a brand. This is stuff people are excited about. And as experts now, as people that have put this conference on for 7 or 8 years, we are now in a position where we're like, this this is just a lot of work. It's not exciting, it's not fun, it's not new. But people love it. Why wouldn't we keep it going, right? So if I look at it as a beginner, as I look at somebody that is excited to get out there and create something for other people and share my knowledge and experience with doing these kinds of things with others, maybe we build another team of people that can take it and run with it forward. Maybe we've done this for too long and we're just worn out. But in some way, this thing has to keep going. This is ridiculous. This is, it's incredibly flattering and humbling to have something like that happen. But I don't know a better way to approach it. So exercise, if you've noticed all my slides start with EX, that's the only reason I use the word exercise. What I really mean is practice. And we think about beginners and the things that they have to do. One of the things that you find yourself doing as a beginner, something you're passionate about, is practicing. You spend a ton of time practicing. I love this Arnold Palmer quote. It's a funny thing, the more I practice, the luckier I get. I think that's phenomenal. But as we think about practicing and honing in on whatever that craft may be, I found myself the first few years that I was a developer doing this. I was coming home from work to explore things that I could do. How can I take this apart? How can I build this thing? How can I make this thing happen? My very first experience with web development was in college. I was using a tool called Adobe PageMill. I don't know if any of you are even old enough to have used this tool. It didn't let you do a whole lot, but it let you build simple pages for the web. And as I built it, as I started building a site in college, I realized this didn't have nearly the power of what I was seeing elsewhere on the web, like the huge search engine that I was using at the time that everybody was using. I jumped past? So we'll come back to this. So then I used that tiny bit of experience that I had with PageMill and like looking at view source and taking other web pages apart. And I parlayed that into my very first development job at a company called Vegas Experts. And they had this little tagline on their website, the most trusted sports handicapping website since 1998. 1998, that was me. I was the guy that helped them start that. And it's an absolute scam. Don't go to this website and give them any of your money. But I was just happy to have a development job. The basic concept is they have a team of like 12 guys that all look good in a suit. It could be stock photography for all I'm concerned. And they sell what they call picks. And so you can go to the website and you can say, I'm going to give this guy $50 for his guaranteed pick. And so he'll give you the Indians are going to beat the Tigers by 2 runs today. And if you bet on that information and you win, then he just keeps your $50. If the bet loses because you bet on his information, then he'll give you another pick. Awesome. It's a great business model. Either way, they get your $50. And so that was the whole concept of Vegas Experts. And this was in a time when you didn't notice this in the URL. I don't think they noticed it, but they got blocked from a lot of places because you just weren't allowed to go there. So this was the big search engine at the time. You guys paid for it. It wasn't actually an engine, it was a search index, right? They actually cataloged the entire internet for you, but it wasn't actually going out and searching. Nobody had heard of this, and it really hadn't even come out of beta, although most of their products live in beta, so I guess that's fair. Nobody had even heard of this except if you were on Stanford's campus. This was the biggest website on the internet at the time, broadcast.com. I don't know if you guys have even heard of this site anymore, but this used to be the YouTube and the XM radio and all of that stuff kind of mixed into one place. You can see it's listed here at number 1, Amazon 3, ESPN 5, mp3.com, den.com. I don't think anybody goes to those anymore. But anyway, broadcast.com is how he got all his money. So if you've heard of Mark Cuban, that's where he got rich. So back to Vegas Experts. So I was building a website for them. And at first it was just static. And I had to go in every day and update all the sports scores. I had to go in and manually edit HTML pages to do all that stuff. And I was screaming inside. I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. But having no real formal training in building web stuff, because I graduated in 98, there weren't web development, web server class, none of that stuff existed. I got to take a lot of Java and Perl and C++ stuff in college, and there wasn't a whole lot of focus on how do you build dynamic web pages. So I built it all on my own. I learned a lot on my own. But I was investing just a ton of my time in learning how to do all this stuff because it was exciting and new and great. And I finally got them to the point where I built them a set of admin tools that could go through the whole process and edit all the data themselves. It screen scraped from ESPN to get the data that we needed. It did all that stuff. And they called me in on a Friday and said, hey Jeff, thanks, this website's awesome. We don't need you anymore. And I was like, oh, God, that really stings. And so I left after trashing the computer. because I was angry. But anyway, so when I just found this book sitting in my office, and this was a diary I was keeping of all the things that I had learned about development. For example, Netscape, by the way, if you used an underscore in a div name, it wouldn't recognize it. It wouldn't even run it. So you had to make sure that you didn't use underscores in div names. I had things about radio button backgrounds and what to do with scrolling in Netscape if you used divs and you had a margin height and a margin width. It would just not turn the scroll bars on. There was all these little things, and I thought I was creating this like journal of brilliance because I was just so excited to learn all these things and take these things apart and figure out how it all worked. So experimentation was the next part, right? We start to play with things like this guy. We start to like really think about how these things work. And so as we think about experimentation, this was the next job I got. I got to a company, it's an advertising agency in Columbus called Resource Interactive, and one of my first jobs there was to build the very first Burton Snowboards e-commerce website. Now I'm not a snowboarder, I'm not even a skier, but it was a cool brand I was aware of. And we got to build the whole website. So it was e-commerce and all their products and all that stuff, but on top of that it was also like a style, culture, fashion kind of website. And on the style side, they had a survey that you could fill out that would help them figure out like what kind of products you might be interested in. And on that site, the very first question was, which one describes you best? I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a boy, I'm just a girl. It said just. And that was their copy, that was how they wanted it to read, and I was blown away. One, because that's kind of insulting to girls, but also, there was a great song out at that time called I'm Just a Girl. And I thought, you know what we should do, because I was experimenting, I was a beginner, and this seemed like a fun thing to do. I don't remember the website anymore, but there was a place where you could upload your own MP3s, and then you could click on a button, create a button on your website, whatever, and it would stream it immediately through the browser. You didn't need plugins, you didn't need anything. It was awesome. And so on the survey, we decided it'd be really fun. We'll just take one pixel at the end of that I'm Just a Girl line, and if you click on that one pixel, it will just start playing the song for you. That'll be clever and fun and whatever. Now, as it turns out, Burton was not a big fan of that. We had a bunch of other Easter eggs littered through the site. You could go in, a page with no input fields. You could just type a specific sentence, and if you did that, a picture of the dev team popped up on the screen. There was a whole bunch of stuff that we had done like that. Again, experimenting, don't recommend it at all. You can lose jobs, there's all sorts of stuff that happens. But it was fun, and it was cool to experiment. So, becoming an expert. Again, I get these EXs all day, we can keep going. But becoming an expert is something that is really important to think about. Because if you're the expert, you're working with the beginners. There's going to be people that are new. There's going to be people that are learning, that are trying to get to where you are, to understand things the way you do. And I find that as experts, we don't always give them the patience and leniency that we would have hoped for as beginners. You get to wear this cool button, which I think is great. But as you're wandering around with this button, you have to give your team, your beginners, the people that are less experienced than you, permission to fail. You have to give them opportunities to make mistakes. You have to let them do that stuff. And I can't tell you how many times I've been on a development team where we have the new guy that's trying to learn and trying to keep up and do everything that we're doing. But we haven't even explained to him how to use the source repository yet. Like, how do I integrate, like, where do I push that stuff? And when he comes to ask, we give him a hard time. We're like, you don't know that? Come on, we've got to give people permission to fail. And I will tell you, when I searched for this photo, I first started with the word freedom to fail. If you just search the word freedom, you get this. And my goodness, is this an awesome picture. Anyway, so if we think about that failure option, though, I don't know if you guys have seen this quote from Michael Jordan before. I've missed more than 900 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot, and I missed. I've failed over and over and over in my life, and that is why I succeed. If Michael Jordan, the pillar of what is considered the greatest basketball player to have ever lived, considers all of the times that he's failed, he's counted how many times he's missed the last shot. I think we can give our team members an opportunity to fail as well. When we're bombarded by questions, how do I do this? How should I solve this problem? How should I do these things? We have two responsibilities here. One, we should always take the time and energy to respond to those people's questions, help them understand why and what they're doing. But on top of that, think about why they're asking the questions in the first place. It's because they don't feel like they're allowed to fail. If they're asking you questions, it's often because they don't want to take a risk. They don't want to take a chance. They don't want you to get upset if they screwed something up. So they're just coming to you and saying, how would you do this? I want to do it that way, so that you don't get upset when I fail. We have to have patience with our beginners. So as an expert, remember, you were a beginner once. Think about the energy and the excitement and the enthusiasm that you have. Think about how much experimentation you got to do. There's a great example from Google, which unfortunately they have phased out, but it was one of the most productive times I think Google's history will ever have. They had what they called 20% time. 4 days a week, you worked on what you were expected to work on, and 1 day a week, you were allowed to work on literally anything you wanted. So think of taking every Friday of your entire year and just creating a pet project and running with it. They created a couple of products from that. You may have heard of a couple of them. Some of them didn't succeed, but a lot of them did. This all came from that 20% time. That's mind-blowing. That people were allowed to work on what they wanted, and now these are cornerstones of what Google is. Okay, so think about what it's like to be a beginner. Keep calm. As an expert, don't pretend. Don't pretend to be smarter than you are. Don't get into a situation where someone asks you a question and you're afraid to say, I don't know. You're allowed to say, I don't know. That was one of the most liberating things I ever learned as I was becoming a speaker and an evangelist. People would ask me crazy questions. How do I integrate this with this and this? I haven't even heard of those two things, so I don't know. Well, let's figure it out. Don't be afraid to just get out there and ask questions and take things on, right? Act like a child. Think how a child would think. How would they approach this problem? Finally, teach. All of us as experts have a responsibility to teach. We need to be able to share our information for two reasons. One, we're helping those that are less experienced than us, but being able to teach something is so much harder than just being able to know how to do something. Think of all the things that you know, you think you know really well. Now force yourself to stand in front of this audience today and tell them how to do it. Very, very different. Thank you.